Hi, we're back with the brilliant owners of Empowered Financial Group. This is Guy Welsh and Stephanie Kidder. They are the owners of the company that has been around since 2018, who's here to help you get out of whatever debt you're in and to find a way to get your future wealth. I like to say future wealth because that's what you guys are all about, just making sure that you're okay in the future.
We talked a little bit about how it is difficult for a lot of people because they're not thinking ahead and planning ahead, and so they're digging themselves into a hole. Who is the ideal person for you to sit down and work with? Is it someone who needs to get out of debt and move forward? Is it, some people might be sitting and thinking, I'm just not in a place. We talked about that. Mm-hmm. I don't have enough money. Yeah. I haven't gotten my stuff in order yet. I'm not there. So who do you work best with? Who's your ideal client?
Ideally, I would love to work with somebody who has no debt, makes a whole bunch of money, and has no idea what they're doing with it. That would be ideal client, right?
So aside from the unicorns.
I was going to say, I think we're talking about collegiate athletes at this point who are getting NIL
the NIL money, no doubt.
And I think you just described them.
Yeah. So, ideal client, somebody who has an income, right? Maybe he's running a business, has a family as well, is trying to get into understanding, what their retirement needs and goals are. They have an idea of what they want to do, but they just aren't sure if they're doing the right thing to get there. And then introducing that person to a process, right? What and Kidder mentioned this before, is having a process to identify, we can always look back on something to make sure that the decisions that we've made are actually working. We run into a lot of people who've been doing something for 10, 15, 12, 100 years, how long they've been doing it, right? Mm-hmm. And they don't know if they've been making any positive progress toward a goal. Right, they just know, hey, I know I'm making 8% returns on my money, and that's great. Well, 8% towards what, right? And so when we try to help people, it's ideally running into somebody who has some assets and has some income coming in. But that doesn't mean that we won't sit down with somebody who doesn't have that, right, and help them work toward that goal. You ask ideal client, I'd like to work with people who are making a good income, but at the end of the day, that's not everybody. So.
Well, and I was thinking, when you go and you sit down and talk with someone about budget, and you have them write out the money that they're spending, and you find out that they're buying 10 Starbucks every day, and you say, hey, if you only bought one Starbucks every week, you'd save all this money. There are some people who will look at that and they see it and they understand how that will affect their future, and they understand the reasons and the purpose, and they want to make the change. Right. And then you see someone else who goes, oh, I just realized that I could buy 11 Starbucks every day and I'd be just fine and stay in the place that I'm in now. So that idea of wanting to move forward and wanting to make sure that you are making those choices. I like how you talk about just because you've done it for the last 10 years doesn't mean it was right.
Right. I think a lot of what we do too is we manage expectations. If you're 30 years old and you come to me and say, I haven't ever saved $1 and I want to retire when I'm 45, I'm like, okay, well, let's run the numbers. Well, what's the number that you need? A lot of times we get questions, how much money do I need?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
well,
wow.
I don't know. What are you going to do? And how long from now do you need it? And so it's coaching them through it's not necessarily a dollar amount that you need. It's what are your goals and how much is that going to cost you? And how much time do you have between now and the time you're going to initiate that thing that you have to save and earn and whatever. Right. And so it's coaching through the managing of expectations. And to your point, if you have a goal in your head of, I want to retire in 15 years, I've saved nothing, and I need $10,000 a month, and we come back and go, okay, great, you can do that, but you're going to have to save $25,000 a month. And they're like, oh, I can't do that. All right, well, then we got to move the goalpost a little bit, all right? But they don't know that until we run numbers and we kind of teach how that all works.
Yeah.
Listen to you guys. Go ahead. It's your show. Go ahead, finish up.
So I think it's important, the educational piece that Kidder was talking about, right? I think one of the main things that we run into quite a bit is we have a lot of people who have gotten a lot of their information passed down to them from family, right? Or past experiences. And I think it's really important that we talk about that, because If you rewind back 50 years ago and you talk about people who are in retirement now or have just recently retired in the last 15 years, they have two things that I think are the shakiest things in the world for anyone moving forward now to the future. We're talking about pensions, right?
Right.
Less than 6% of the workforce currently are offering a pension plan to anybody.
Correct.
Right? So if you look back at my grandma and my grandpa, they retired after working for one company for 25 years and they got a percentage of their paycheck paid out to them for the rest of their life. Most people do not have that. Unless you're a public service person or a teacher or in the military, you don't have a pension account, right? So you do not have that to rely on. Secondly, Social Security. A lot of people who have been retiring in the last 50 years rely heavily on Social Security. Well, if you look at the Social Security program, I would say that's shaky at best to be able to rely on for an income stream in your retirement plan.
Wow.
So what does that leave? That leaves one more peg for you to look at, and that's your personal savings. So people back in the day had a pension, Social Security, and their personal savings to help guide them through retirement. You take two of those things away,
Wow.
you only have one more thing left, and that's on you. Right? No one else is going to come save you in retirement when you need income other than the things that you've done and the habits that you've created for yourself over that retirement savings period. So it's really, really important that people understand that, because most people think, I work for 30 years, I put my head down, I grind, and I'll turn 65 and I'll be able to retire just like my grandma did. It's not going to work like that for people anymore.
Yeah. I like that. What you're doing, making sure that when they retire, they're on the island. And you guys are goal focused, your personal touch, and your transaction based and more than your people based more than transaction based.
Right.
Which makes it so great. But one thing I want to make sure that people know that not only do you do personal touches, you deal with companies also and help companies and their employees.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we focus a lot in some small business, local small business, anywhere, like Guy said, from 2 to 50. I mean, we've got some bigger companies that we work with also, but certainly small business. And how does it benefit? What kind of things can the owner of the small business do that is a win-win for the owner and the employees?
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's a lot of things that can be done from an employee benefit standpoint to help attract and retain employees. In the job market that we're in right now, that's a big deal. So what kind of things are you offering to your employees to entice them to stay here? It's not all just about salary. It's all the ancillary things too that are of benefit. How can we figure out what things does that particular owner want to offer to their employees? Right. How does it benefit their employees? And how does it benefit the employer from a tax perspective? You know, what are those write-offs there? And that it's a win-win.
A lot of things you don't even think about. You guys already had this before. This is not your first. It's not your first rodeo. You've done this 100 times. So people need to understand that you guys are very skilled. They just need to listen a little bit more and be, like I said, don't be afraid to come and touch base with you guys.
It's a fear thing. I agree with you 100%. Just don't be afraid to talk about yourself. Most people are afraid because they haven't actually had that conversation with their own self. Right. So sitting down with somebody that they might not know really well and kind of talking about things that they haven't even spoken with their spouse about.
Yes.
Or themselves about. Yeah, it's intimidating. I completely understand, but it doesn't have to be.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to, you mentioned tax strategies.
Mhm.
So for us in real estate, really that is a tax strategy as well. Not only are we concerned about our future, but also we want to maximize the income that we have throughout the year. Do you want to just touch a little bit more on some of those strategies that you do use to help people, and what time of year is the right time to start, putting that money aside?
Mm-hmm. So I think that, first of all, the good time of the year is now, or yesterday. Yeah,
Okay,
now,
I like
immediately. What we try and accomplish is creating a diverse portfolio, whether it's tax diversification, it is investment diversification, it is the idea of not having all your eggs in one basket and not having your investments, whether that's real estate or actual traditional investments, having the same tax treatment. Because what we want to try and do is have balance in risk, in taxes, in when it's going to be taxed, how it's going to be taxed, creating a balance of liquidity. The name of the game is is balance. Probably have some to add to that too, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about taxes, right, I think there's two separate tax conversations. Number one is, how do I save taxes now, right, every single year? And then number two, how do I save taxes when I actually need to spend my money in retirement? right? So I think it's two separate conversations that we need to look at, right? Now, working with a CPA or working with somebody in the current situation to make sure that we're not paying too much money in taxes now, well, we got to make sure that we're thinking about that. But at the same time, we also have to look at, well, what is the future tax consequences of what I'm doing now? Are we entering into a rising tax environment, or are we going into a lowering tax environment? Now, again, I don't have a crystal ball, but I do know that taxes seem to be heading towards the way of getting more and higher, right? So looking at things of, okay, yeah, it makes sense to save taxes now, but if I'm saving taxes now to pay them higher on the back end, is that the most effective strategy? Because that's not going to work very much more, especially in a rising tax environment that we seem to be going into now. So your question is a multifaceted question, because yes, we need to make sure we're saving money, especially if you're talking about people involved in real estate who are 1099 employees. They need to act like that, and they need to be able to put the money away to save for their tax bill on a yearly basis. But they also need to be thinking about, what are my tax liabilities when I actually need to spend my money, whether that's real estate, rental income, right? Rental income, every dollar that's going to be taxed when you need it. So just making sure that those things are being thought about, so that we are not planning on having, $10,000 a month, but then we raise taxes by 5% over the next 15 years, and now that $10,000 is cut down to $8,500.
I need people to know how to get a hold of you guys.
Perfect. We have a website, empowerfinancialgroupllc.com. You can go there. On that website is a very easy way to get a hold of us. We have our Calendly, basically our schedules, right there online. So you can go on there, go to the very bottom. It says schedule a meeting. You can schedule it with Kidder. You can schedule it with me. It's right there. Our beautiful faces are sitting right there in the bottom of the page. You can click it, find our schedule, make sure what works with you works with us, and you can get a hold of us that way. It's the easiest way.
And with that, we just want to say thank you to our guests, but also to the sponsors that make this show possible: Pioneer Title Agency, Indy Realty, Inspired Life Mortgage, Rego Pest Prevention, and Power, that's POWUR Solar. And so when you use them, please let them know that you heard about their services on the I Am Real Estate Show.
Thanks, guys, for being on the show.
Thank you.
Guys.